Right guys, we have more evidence we could see haptic buttons with the iPhone 15 series, so let's delve into it. So in case you weren't aware, Minchiko a while back did tell us the iPhone 15 Pro series could remove physical buttons, and those could be replaced by haptic buttons with individual Taptic engines. Essentially, this should be the equivalent of the iPhone 7 home button, where of course, the button does not physically move. Instead, haptics simulate the pressing function. Now this did seem pretty wild and bonkers, but I thought this actually made sense because number one, of course, like they did with the iPhone 7, this would improve water resistance because there would no longer be actual holes for the buttons. But also, of course, Apple could save space inside the device, and that space could be allocated to other parts like the cameras or the battery. Also, a moving part is more likely to go wrong, so I think it makes sense that Apple does this, but a lot of you guys were against this, and I have to agree this was kind of a bonkers report. However, now there is actual evidence that Apple does have initial plans to do this. So Cirrus Logic, a company that produces high-performance mixed-signal chips, says they're currently engaging with a strategic customer that expects to bring a new component to smartphones next year. Now the component in question is exactly what Apple uses with the haptic engines, and so since this manufacturer is expecting an increase in the production of these components, it's likely Apple wants more of these to of course replace the buttons. And Barclays also agrees with this. They say these additional Taptic engines are most likely for the haptic buttons. That's really the only possibility that could make sense. And to further add to this, the CEO of that manufacturer says this new component's coming to market in the back half of next year, which of course is usually when we see new iPhone models. Now yes, I know they don't mention Apple specifically, so there is a chance this is actually a completely different company they're talking about, but I do think it's likely to be Apple because no one orders Taptic engines on the scale Apple needs. They produce millions and millions of iPhones, and so if Cirrus Logic are going to be producing new components at a massive scale for smartphones, it's likely iPhone related. And yes, like I said, I'm completely down for this. I'm pretty excited for this change for the reasons I mentioned before, but also of course, remember there is a possibility we could see gestures. So for example, instead of pressing down on the volume buttons, maybe scroll down the side of the device to decrease the volume, and of course, to increase it, you scroll up on the sides. So yes, looking forward to how Apple implements this. I think the only concern I have is of course cases. How are the gestures and these haptic buttons gonna work when your iPhone's in a case? Does the case now need cutouts around the sides? I'm not too sure myself, but if Apple's gonna implement this, I'm sure they're considering this. Anyways, let's delve into your questions. So Mike says, I would typically purchase an iPhone Pro model, but if next year's Pro Max / Ultra model gets the periscope zoom lens and the titanium finish, I may consider going for the larger model, especially if it weighs just as much or less than the regular Pro model. And this is exactly what Apple wants. They're going to upsell consumers to the Ultra with the exclusive features, and that's going to increase Apple's average selling price for iPhones. And so yes, I'm sure many people are going to do the same and go for the Ultra instead when they usually get the regular Pro. And I think the titanium chassis is going to be the big upgrade that's going to sway regular Pro consumers, because I know many have complained about the weight of the Pro Max, and so if Apple can drastically reduce that, I think most regular Pro users will put up with the bigger size for the additional features. So Matthew says, I'd be down with going from 6.1 inches to 6.3 inches and 6.7 inches to 7 inches. I always favor the smaller size, but seeing my brother-in-law's 14 Pro Max and him showing us some honeymoon pics on it, that is some kind of screen and really makes me want one, but it's just so big in the pocket, plus the additional $200, so just want a little more screen with the regular Pro. So I do want to first mention you're mistaken, there is only a $100 difference between the Pro and Pro Max. But yes, I can see why you're being swayed by the Pro Max, because as someone who has the 14 Pro Max, I love the bigger size. I love the real estate and watching content on it, but personally I don't think the Pro Max needs to be any bigger because it's already a pretty wide device. Making it larger could become unwieldy for some consumers, and so I think it should stay at 6.7 inches. Either that or of course we see a small increase, but 7 inches I think that's too big. However, I am down for the regular Pro becoming 6.3 inches. I know some swear by the 6.1 inch size, but considering there won't be many upgrades coming to the regular Pro, they might as well give us a bigger screen so that, of course, it can differentiate itself from the regular 15. And yes, I can understand why you think 6.3 inches would be a somewhat happy medium, because yes, I do agree the Pro Max is a pretty large device to keep in your pocket, so I can understand your concerns. And so yes, it would be nice if the regular Pro got larger. And actually, I do remember there being a report regarding this, so yeah, this could be the case. So David says, I was already planning to get the iPhone Ultra, but will probably hold on to it for as long as possible, which is why phone subscription is a non-starter for me. With the cost of living crisis, I can't see a lot of sales this year, and he's already seen discounts on the Apple Watch Ultra. Now, regarding your first point, I do understand that iPhones can be kept for years nowadays, and so you can easily keep the 15 Ultra for 3, 4, even 5 years, and upgrading on a yearly basis just isn't for everyone. And as I've said in previous videos, I'm sure Apple understands this, and that's why they're leaning into services. And when I say services, I mean iClouds, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcades, Apple Music. That's recurring revenue for them all year round, and you don't need to buy new hardware, so Apple's fully aware of this. And this is kind of related to your other point regarding sales units being pretty low due to the cost of living crisis. And yes, I do agree with that to an extent, but of course, remember iPhone 14 demand's still very strong, and really the only thing affecting shipments is, of course, the supply constraints. And also remember that many consumers are not paying up front for these phones. They're trading in devices, they're taking advantage of deals, they're paying monthly for these, and so yeah, basically apart from us techies, I doubt that many are going to be paying $1,000 up front. And regarding discounts on the Apple Watch Ultra, do remember that's a niche product. Most consumers are not going to spend $800 on a watch. It's for those who do extreme sports, and so discounts on that make sense, but we rarely see discounts on new iPhones, and that's because the demand's still there for the product, and they don't need price cuts. So at User says, if Apple really thinks cameras are so important, why don't they make a Pro camera mode? Users can switch from the default camera app to, of course, a Pro mode. And yeah, honestly, I'm not sure myself. I think it's time we see a Pro mode for the iPhone, because when they're touting features like ProRes and ProRAW, having a basic camera app alongside it is not that great. And I know there are third-party apps that, of course, Apple themselves have promoted, but having this built in natively would be nice. Anyways, tell me your thoughts regarding this report in the comments. Anyways, thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumors. Check out the video in the link above on details regarding Apple's VR headset. And on that note, see ya peeps.